Since you're determined to stay, you might as well look like the help. Freeze everything.
A crystal wine glass slipped from someone's trembling fingers and shattered across the polished marble floor, the sharp sound echoing through the grand ballroom just as a wave of deep red wine splashed across the chest of a man standing quietly near the stage. The laughter came almost instantly. "There," a confident voice said. "Maybe next time you'll remember where you belong." More laughter followed. Every camera in the room stayed focused on the stage, where the city's most powerful executives were celebrating the biggest business partnership of the decade, and no one noticed the man standing motionless as expensive wine dripped from his suit onto the white marble beneath him. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He slowly removed a neatly folded handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the wine from his cheek, his eyes settling on the smiling man who had poured it. There wasn't an ounce of anger in them, only disappointment. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and quietly said, "Freeze everything," before ending the call without another word. Less than 10 seconds later, nearly 400 miles away, a conference room full of attorneys stopped talking as every phone on the table vibrated at once. One of them looked at the message. "Chairman authorization received." He stood immediately. "So it begins." Back inside the ballroom, nobody had the slightest idea what those two words had just set into motion. If you're enjoying stories where pride meets justice and kindness always finds its reward, take a second to subscribe. There are many more unforgettable stories waiting for you. Only 6 hours earlier, the atmosphere inside the same hotel had been entirely different. The Orion Grand Hotel overlooked the city skyline like a palace made of glass and light, luxury cars rolling beneath its entrance canopy, one after another, while photographers called the names of celebrities, politicians, and corporate leaders arriving for the annual Horizon Industries Gala. Among the arriving guests walked a man who attracted almost no attention. His name was Chris Mercer, 39 years old, tall, composed, dressed in a simple navy blue suit that looked elegant without trying to impress anyone. No bodyguard surrounded him, no expensive watch demanded admiration, no designer logo announced wealth. Anyone passing him would have guessed he was a financial consultant, or perhaps a quiet attorney attending on behalf of a client. Exactly as Chris intended. Very few people knew what Chris actually looked like. Years earlier, he had founded Mercer Global Holdings, a private investment empire whose acquisitions quietly reshaped industries across North America. He hated interviews, avoided magazine covers, refused television appearances. Whenever billion-dollar agreements were signed, his attorneys handled the publicity while Chris remained invisible. Tonight's gala was different. Mercer Global Holdings was preparing to invest $2 billion into Horizon Industries, a rapidly growing technology company that promised to revolutionize sustainable manufacturing, an investment that would instantly transform Horizon into one of the most valuable companies in the country. Only the chairman of Horizon's board had ever met Chris face to face. Everyone else expected the deal to be finalized through lawyers, and none of them imagined the owner himself would quietly attend the celebration. Chris wanted to observe one thing before signing the agreement: character. He believed balance sheets revealed how companies earned money, and employees revealed whether they deserved it. As he entered the ballroom, a young waiter hurried toward him carrying 2 overloaded trays. "I'm so sorry. Could you hold this for just 1 second?" Chris smiled. "Of course," and steadied one tray while the young man adjusted the other. "Thank you," the waiter sighed, and Chris shrugged it off. No problem. Several executives walked past without acknowledging the exhausted waiter at all, and one brushed his shoulder hard enough to nearly knock the glasses over. "Watch where you're standing," he snapped, and the waiter apologized even though he hadn't moved. Chris noticed everything. A few moments later, another employee accidentally dropped an entire stack of printed seating cards, dozens of them scattering across the floor, while most guests simply stepped over them. Chris bent down beside her. "So, these are arranged alphabetically?" She looked embarrassed. "Yes, let's fix it." They gathered the cards together before anyone else offered to help. "Thank you," she said softly. "My supervisor would have blamed me." "You don't need to thank me." "I do." Before Chris could respond, another voice interrupted. "There you are." He turned to find a woman in a simple emerald green evening dress, approaching with an apologetic smile. "I've been looking everywhere." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid we've never met." She laughed. "I know. I'm Claire. I coordinate the gala." He shook her hand. "Chris. I saw you helping my staff. It looked like they needed another pair of hands." "They always do," she said, smiling genuinely, then studied him a moment. "So why are you really here?" "I was invited." She glanced discreetly around the ballroom. "I figured that. No offense, but most people who arrive alone spend the first 10 minutes trying to introduce themselves to someone important. And me? You've spent the first 10 minutes helping employees." He chuckled. "I suppose that's true. There are very few genuinely kind people in rooms like this," Claire said. "I've found kindness usually costs less than arrogance," Chris replied, and she smiled wider. "I like that." Their conversation was cut short by applause as the ballroom doors opened once again and a crowd gathered around a tall, sharply dressed executive entering with cameras flashing in every direction. Victor Langford, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Industries. Walking beside him was his daughter, Vanessa Langford, the company's Executive Vice President. Beautiful, ambitious, and fiercely confident, carrying herself like someone already certain she belonged on magazine covers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor announced to thunderous applause, "tonight we celebrate a partnership that will redefine the future." Claire leaned closer to Chris. "They're expecting the Mercer investment to close tonight." "So I've heard." While Victor greeted investors with practiced charm, Vanessa quietly inspected the ballroom, and nothing escaped her attention. She frowned. "Who approved him standing there?" An assistant looked confused. "The gentleman near the front. I'm not sure. He looks like event staff." "I'll check." Before the assistant could move, Victor waved him off. "Forget it. They'll clear the area before the presentation." Chris heard every word and simply smiled. Claire looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry? For what?" "They shouldn't judge people like that." "They haven't judged me," Chris said. "They've judged what they think I am." "Doesn't that bother you?" "It tells me more about them than it does about me." Claire couldn't explain why, but there was something remarkably peaceful about him. Not passive, peaceful, like someone with absolutely nothing to prove. The evening continued. Guests mingled, champagne flowed, investors discussed markets, reporters prepared interviews, and Chris wandered quietly through the ballroom, listening more than speaking. Again and again he noticed the same pattern. Executives ignoring janitors, assistants spoken to like servants, waiters apologizing for mistakes they hadn't made. Only Claire seemed to treat everyone equally. At one point, she found him standing beside a panoramic window overlooking the city. "You've avoided every networking group in the room. I prefer conversations, not business opportunities. The right opportunity doesn't need chasing. You talk differently than most executives." "Who says I'm an executive?" She laughed. "Fair point." There was an easy silence between them, comfortable, unexpected, before she finally asked, "Can I ask you something?" "You just did." She rolled her eyes. "Seriously, go ahead." "What do you actually do?" Chris looked toward the glittering skyline. "I invest in people." "That's vague." "It's also true." She studied his face, searching for a clue, and found only calm confidence. Not arrogance, not insecurity, just quiet certainty. For reasons she couldn't explain, she trusted him. Across the ballroom, Vanessa was watching them. "Who's she talking to?" Her assistant shrugged. "No idea. He doesn't belong with the VIP guests." "He isn't bothering anyone." "He will," Vanessa said, and walked directly toward them. Claire noticed first. "Good evening, Ms. Langford." Vanessa barely acknowledged her, attention fixed on Chris. "Excuse me." "Yes?" "The guest area for staff is through those doors." Claire stepped in immediately. "Actually, he's—" Vanessa raised one finger. "I wasn't speaking to you." And Claire fell silent. Chris answered calmly, "I appreciate the directions." "Then use them. I'm comfortable here. This section is reserved for invited guests." "I am an invited guest." Vanessa gave a short laugh. "I'm sure you believe that," Claire spoke up again. "He has a valid invitation." "So does the catering company," Vanessa snapped, and turned and walked away without another word. Claire sighed heavily. "I can't believe she spoke to you like that." Chris watched Vanessa disappear into the crowd. "I can." "You don't seem offended." "I came here hoping to learn who deserved my trust." "And?" "I've learned quite a bit already." "What exactly are you investing in?" Claire asked, curious now. Chris smiled. "You'll know soon enough." The ballroom lights dimmed, and the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes, Horizon Industries will officially announce the largest private investment partnership in company history." The room erupted into applause, and Victor and Vanessa exchanged confident smiles, neither of them noticing Chris quietly slipping his phone into his inside pocket, nor realizing that before the night was over, every dream they had celebrated would hang by a single decision made by the man they had mistaken for someone who didn't belong. The applause grew louder as Victor Langford stepped to the center of the stage and spread his arms with the confidence of a man who believed the future already belonged to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight marks the beginning of a new era. In just a few moments, Horizon Industries will complete a $2 billion partnership that will transform our company into the market leader for decades to come." The ballroom erupted into cheers. Vanessa stood proudly beside her father, smiling as camera flashes lit the stage, while Claire remained near the side entrance, watching everything, occasionally glancing toward Chris, who hadn't moved from his spot near a marble column, holding nothing more than a glass of sparkling water. She walked over. "I have a feeling you're thinking about something." "I am." "You still haven't told me what you do." "I will." "When?" "When the right moment arrives." She laughed softly. "You really enjoy mysteries." "I enjoy truth." Before she could answer, Victor's booming voice filled the ballroom again. "We also wish to thank every employee who helped make tonight possible." Polite applause followed. Then he smiled arrogantly. "Although I must admit, some people still have trouble understanding where they belong." and his eyes drifted toward Chris. Vanessa noticed the same thing, and several executives followed Victor's gaze. Claire's smile faded. Victor stepped down from the stage, accepted a crystal wine glass from a waiter, and walked directly toward Chris as the room slowly grew quiet. Claire instinctively followed. Victor stopped barely 2 feet away. "You," Chris looked up. "Good evening. I asked my staff to keep unauthorized people away from this area." "I was invited," Victor chuckled. "I'm sure you were." "Why do people always insist on embarrassing themselves?" Vanessa said, arms folded. Claire stepped between them. "Mr. Langford, he really does have an invitation." Victor barely looked at her. "Claire, return to your duties." "But I said return to your duties." She hesitated, and Chris said gently, "It's all right." "It isn't," she said. "I'll be fine," he reassured her. Victor took another slow sip of wine. "You know what's wrong with people like you? I don't know people like me. You think being allowed into a room means you belong in it. No. What then? I believe respect should never depend on where someone stands." Victor laughed loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "There he goes, the philosopher." Vanessa smirked. "Maybe we should hire him to give motivational speeches in the cafeteria." A few executives laughed. Claire looked horrified. "Please stop." Victor ignored her, raised a bottle of red wine, and smiled cruelly. "Since you're determined to stay, you might as well look like the help." Without warning, he tipped the entire bottle, and dark red wine poured over Chris's shoulders, soaking his suit and dripping onto the polished floor. Several guests gasped. A waiter froze in place. Claire rushed forward with a stack of white linen napkins. "Oh, my goodness!" Vanessa caught her arm. "Leave him." Claire pulled free. "No." She reached Chris first. "I'm so sorry." He accepted one napkin. "Thank you," in a voice that remained calm, almost unbelievably calm, and slowly wiped the wine from his face. Victor waited for shouting, for threats, for anger. Instead, Chris simply folded the stained napkin neatly and looked directly into Victor's eyes. "I hope that made you feel important." Victor's smile faltered for the first time. Chris reached into his jacket, removed his phone, and dialed one number. The ballroom had gone so quiet that several nearby guests could hear every word. "This is Chris," a voice answered immediately. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer. Freeze every agreement involving Horizon Industries." No hesitation. "Immediately?" "Immediately." "What about tomorrow's signing ceremony?" "There won't be one." "Understood." The call ended. Victor laughed. "Trying to impress people?" Chris slipped the phone back into his pocket. "No." He looked toward Claire. "Thank you for being kind." Then he quietly walked toward the ballroom doors. Claire called after him. "Wait." He stopped, and she caught up. "You don't deserve what happened." "I know. I'm sorry. You've apologized enough for other people's behavior. I wish tonight had gone differently." "So do I." For a brief moment, they simply looked at one another, and then Chris smiled gently. "I hope we meet again." Before Claire could answer, he walked away, and she watched the elevator doors close behind him. Something inside her told her that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Less than 5 minutes later, Victor climbed back onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," his microphone suddenly cut out. He frowned. The technicians looked confused. Then one executive hurried across the ballroom, carrying a tablet, his face gone completely pale. "Sir." "What?" "The signing portal just shut down. So restart it." We already tried. Another executive approached. Our banking partners aren't answering. A third rushed over. The investment attorneys have left the conference room. Victor stared. What are you talking about? One of Horizon's board members took a phone call and listened only a few seconds before his expression collapsed. No, Victor grabbed his arm. What happened? The funding has been suspended. By who? They won't say. Within seconds, every phone in the ballroom began vibrating at once, executives answering one call after another. What? That's impossible. They withdrew? When? No. The celebration dissolved into panic. Investors gathering their belongings, financial analysts rushing outside to make calls, reporters sensing a major story unfolding. Vanessa grabbed her father's sleeve. Dad, our stock. She held up her phone. It's already falling. Victor snatched it from her. The live trading alerts kept flashing. Emergency notices, institutional withdrawals, trading pressure, credit review, all at once. This can't be real. It is, whispered the chairman of Horizon's board. Victor turned on him. You know something. The chairman looked exhausted. I warned you. About what? About character. What does that have to do with this? He closed his eyes. You never asked who owned Mercer Global Holdings. What? You assumed the lawyers represented the owners. Vanessa slowly shook her head. No. The chairman nodded once. The man you humiliated tonight, he said, his voice barely rising above a whisper, is Chris Mercer. Silence. Absolute silence. Victor stared at him. No. He founded Mercer Global. No. He owns 58% of the company. Vanessa's face lost all color. He personally approves every acquisition over $100 million, the chairman continued. He was here because he wanted to evaluate us before signing. One executive whispered, My God. Claire stood frozen near the ballroom entrance, remembering every conversation. I invest in people, you'll know soon enough. And everything suddenly made sense. Victor grabbed the chairman. Call him. I already did. And he declined. Call again. He won't answer. News alerts appeared on every television screen inside the ballroom. Mercer Global halts $2 billion, Horizon investment. Shares of Horizon plunge. Emergency board meeting called. Reporters flooded the exits. Guests hurried away, eager to avoid being associated with the disaster. Within 20 minutes, the AI celebration had become a financial funeral. If you've ever watched Pride collapse in real time, you already know this is only the beginning of the fallout. Stick around, because the reckoning is just getting started. The following morning, every major business network carried the same story. Footage from the Gala had leaked online, and although the actual wine incident hadn't been filmed clearly, witnesses described it in detail, and public outrage exploded. Headlines condemned Horizon's leadership. Investors questioned the company's culture. Clients suspended negotiations. By lunchtime, Horizon had lost nearly 40% of its market value. Victor barely slept. Vanessa hadn't stopped crying. Late that afternoon, they received one final opportunity. Chris had agreed to meet them, not at Horizon's headquarters, but at Mercer Global. Victor and Vanessa entered the executive boardroom, surrounded by walls of glass overlooking the city, and every member of Mercer's board stood as Chris entered. No fanfare, no arrogance, just quiet respect. He wore another simple navy suit. Victor lowered his head. I'm sorry. Chris remained standing. For which part? Victor struggled. The misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Chris said calmly. It was. You understood exactly what you believed. Victor said nothing. You believed I was beneath you, No. You believed my clothing determined my value. Victor's shoulders slumped. I made a terrible mistake. You made many. Vanessa stepped forward. We judged you before knowing who you were. Chris looked directly at her. No. You judged me because you believed I wasn't anyone important. The room fell silent. If I had actually been a waiter, he said, letting the question hang, would your behavior have been acceptable? Neither of them answered. Chris walked slowly toward the windows overlooking the city. My grandfather cleaned office buildings for 30 years, he said, and Victor looked up. He taught me something when I was 10. Chris smiled faintly. He said, the richest person in any room is the one who never has to make someone else feel small. I've never forgotten that. Vanessa wiped away tears. We'll change. I hope you do. Please, don't destroy the company. Chris looked toward the board members. I'm not destroying Horizon. You are. No, you did that yourselves. Another long silence followed, and finally, Chris spoke. The investment is permanently withdrawn. Victor closed his eyes. I understand. I sincerely hope you become better leaders. Then Chris walked to the door, and the meeting was over. Several weeks passed. Shareholders demanded accountability. Victor resigned. Vanessa stepped down from every executive position before beginning leadership training at a non-profit organization dedicated to workplace ethics. A completely new management team took over Horizon, and the company survived, smaller, humbled, determined never to repeat the same mistakes. Meanwhile, Mercer Global announced a new investment, not in Horizon, but in another manufacturing company known for promoting employees from within and treating every worker with dignity. One Friday afternoon, Claire received an unexpected phone call. Hello? Claire? She recognized the voice instantly. Chris. I hope I'm not interrupting. You aren't. I have a question. I'm listening. When we first met, you helped a stranger without expecting anything. I remember, she smiled. My company has a leadership fellowship. I know. I'd like you to lead it. She blinked. Me? I've reviewed your work. You spoke highly of every employee. You defended people when it wasn't popular. You solved problems instead of assigning blame. You demonstrated leadership before anyone offered you the title. She laughed through happy tears. I don't know what to say. Try yes. Yes. I hoped you'd say that, he smiled. 6 months later, the fellowship graduation ceremony took place in the same hotel where everything had begun, though this time the atmosphere felt entirely different. Every employee, from security guards to executives, sat together at the same tables. No reserved status, no invisible walls, only respect. Claire stepped off the stage after delivering her speech, and Chris met her near the ballroom entrance. You've changed this company, she shook her head. We changed it. I suppose we did, he smiled. She looked around the room. It's strange. What is? The best thing that ever happened to me began with the worst night of my career. And the worst night of mine, she laughed. I doubt that. I ruined a perfectly good suit. She laughed even harder. So that's what bothered you? It was an excellent suit. She slipped her hand into his. You look better in this one. I was hoping you'd say that. As music filled the ballroom, they walked onto the terrace overlooking the glowing city skyline. Claire leaned gently against him. What happens now? Chris looked across the light stretching toward the horizon. Now we keep building companies where every person matters. She smiled. I think that's worth investing in. So do I. They stood together as the sun disappeared beyond the skyline, knowing their future had been built not on wealth, but on the simple decision to treat a stranger with kindness when everyone else chose pride. And perhaps that's the greatest investment anyone can ever make, not in buildings, stocks, or billion-dollar deals, but in people. If this story reminded you that kindness is never wasted and respect costs nothing, subscribe for more unforgettable stories of justice, hope, romance, and second chances. Until the next story, remember, the way you treat people when you think they have nothing often reveals everything about who you truly are.